News broke today that guitarist Ace Frehley has passed away at the age of 74, leaving the rock world stunned and grieving. He should have still been here with us, celebrating the incredible journey that began more than 50 or 55 years ago, but tragically, he's gone, and much of the hardship he faced over the years came from his own struggles. He had left and rejoined Kiss 3 different times, and although the band tried to move forward, today they are devastated by the loss. Ace died after complications from a fall in his home studio just a few weeks earlier. Despite early signs that he might recover, his condition worsened, surrounded by family and close friends. Ace Frehley, the guitarist who changed rock music for generations, took his final breath at age 74. His impact on music, style, and spectacle is impossible to measure. Among the many heartfelt tributes, the one that surprised fans the most came from Gene Simmons. Even after decades of ups and downs, Gene appeared deeply shaken by Ace's passing. Just hours after the official announcement, Gene posted a long, emotional message that revealed a side of him the public rarely sees. "Today, I didn't just lose a bandmate, I lost a brother," Gene wrote. His message was raw and honest, nothing like the tough persona he usually shows the world. Gene admitted that although everyone knew about the conflicts between them, few understood the bond that forms when you build something from nothing, achieve the impossible, and travel the world together. Gene also shared that he and Ace had quietly reconnected. "We talked just 3 weeks ago," he revealed. "We were planning to get together before Christmas. Some things shouldn't be postponed. I'm grateful we said what we needed to say." One of the most surprising confessions came when Gene spoke about Ace's first departure from Kiss in 1982. He said he put on a strong public face, but privately he was crushed. Gene even admitted he begged Ace to stay in the band and offered to change aspects of their shows and musical direction if it would help. "People always saw me as the businessman," Gene wrote. "But I spent many nights wondering if I could have done more to protect the brotherhood we once had." Gene went on to say that Ace wasn't just the lead guitarist, he was the spirit of Kiss during the early years. His creativity, his humor, his wild personality, and his incredible instincts on guitar were unlike anyone else's. Gene even shared a story about secretly standing off to the side of the stage during the reunion tours to watch Ace's solos because it reminded him of their earliest days. When they were young dreamers playing clubs in New York, the part that moved fans most was Gene's regret that the original 4 members never performed together one last time. "My greatest regret is that we couldn't share the stage again as the original lineup," he wrote. "There were attempts behind the scenes that fans never heard about, but pride and business decisions got in the way, on all sides, and now it's too late." His message ended with a line that quickly went viral. "Wherever you are, Space Ace, save me a spot in your band. I'll bring the bass. You bring that laugh that could light up any room. Rock and roll heaven just got a lot louder." Fans and music critics alike have been struck by how heartfelt Gene's reaction has been. People close to the band have said that Gene has been in constant contact with Ace's family since his passing, helping them with arrangements and anything else they need. Paul Stanley later mentioned in an interview that Gene has been deeply affected. "He's absolutely devastated," Paul said. "People never realized how strong their connection was, even through all the tough years." A music historian summed it up perfectly. Beyond the makeup and the business side of things, these were real men who shared something meaningful, a bond that shaped their lives and changed rock history. Ace Frehley's story began in 1951. In the working-class neighborhoods of the Bronx, New York, born Paul Daniel Frehley, he was the youngest of 3 children raised by Esther and Carl Frehley. Music was a constant presence at home. His father, Carl, was an electrical engineer who also played the church organ. His mother, Esther, played piano. His brother, Charles, was trained in classical guitar, and his sister, Nancy, was also musical. Ace grew up surrounded by sound. Everything changed at Christmas in 1964, when 13-year-old Paul opened a present that would define his future, his first electric guitar. From then on, he spent hours in his room learning songs by ear, figuring out riffs from Jimi Hendrix, The Who, and Led Zeppelin. His parents encouraged him to take lessons, but Ace preferred to teach himself, a habit that followed him throughout life. Growing up in the Bronx wasn't easy. Ace drifted into trouble more than once, getting expelled from 2 high schools, DeWitt, Clinton, and Roosevelt, before dropping out of a third. He hung around with local gangs and was headed toward a dangerous lifestyle. But music became his refuge. As he often said later in life, playing guitar kept him on the right path. It was during these teenage years that he got the nickname Ace. His friends joked that he always managed to help his buddies meet girls. "You're an ace at this," they'd say. The name stuck, and soon the world would know him not as Paul Frehley, but as Ace, Frehley. By early 1973, Ace was performing with various New York bands, playing clubs and bars, but still unsure of his direction. One day he saw an ad in the Village Voice that read, "Lead guitarist wanted with flash and ability." The band was Wicked Lester, soon to be renamed Kiss, led by Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. They already had Peter Criss on drums and were searching for a final member. Ace's audition has become legendary. He arrived wearing mismatched sneakers, one red, one orange, looking like he didn't care about appearances at all. But the moment he plugged in and tore into a solo over the song Deuce, Gene and Paul knew they had found something special. Within a week, Ace Frehley was the lead guitarist of Kiss. Together, the band created larger-than-life personas with full makeup and costumes. Gene became the Demon, Paul became the Star Child, Peter was the Catman, and Ace, with his fascination for space and sci-fi, became the Spaceman. His silver makeup with black, star-themed eyes became iconic. Ace even designed the famous Kiss lightning bolt logo, thanks to his experience in graphic arts. On stage, Ace was electrifying. Although quiet and shy off stage, he came alive under the lights. He invented the flashy guitar tricks that are now standard in rock shows, making his guitar smoke, firing rockets from the fretboard, and even riding a jet. Fans didn't just listen to Kiss. They watched the spectacle, and Ace was the one who made that spectacle unforgettable. Though gifted, Ace was hesitant to sing lead vocals at first. On the band's early albums, he wrote songs like Cold Gin, but let Gene perform the lead parts. That changed in 1977 with the Love Gun album, where Ace finally took the mic on Shock Me, inspired by the time he was nearly electrocuted during a concert. Fans loved it, and Ace's confidence soared. Then came 1978, a milestone year. All 4 Kiss members released solo albums at the same time, a risky move in music history. But Ace's self-titled album became the biggest success of the 4. His hit single New York Groove reached number 13 on the Billboard chart, and the album went platinum. Suddenly, Ace wasn't just the Spaceman. He was a major star on his own. But the pressure of fame, endless touring, and the temptations of rock and roll life began affecting Ace. Tensions grew within the band, and by 1982, tired and wanting creative freedom, Ace decided to leave Kiss. He stepped back from the spotlight for a while, but returned in 1984 with his new band, Frehley's Comet. Their 1987 debut album produced the hit Into the Night, reminding fans that Ace still had the magic. He released more music through the late 80s and early 90s, even as he struggled with personal challenges. Then, in 1995, something fans thought would never happen actually did. The original Kiss lineup reunited. Ace put the Spaceman makeup back on for the massively successful Kiss Alive Worldwide Reunion Tour. The dream lasted until 2002, when Ace departed again. In his personal life, Ace married Jeanette Treratola in 1976. During the peak of Kiss's fame, they welcomed their daughter Monique, and although Ace and Jeanette eventually divorced, they remained on good terms and united in raising their daughter. Ace and Monique were incredibly close. They even had matching AC tattoos. Despite his wild stage image, Ace never completely abandoned his spiritual roots. Raised Lutheran by his father, he kept his belief in God throughout his life. In a 2009 interview, he said that faith helped him through dark times. In early 2024, he posted New Year's resolutions that included wanting to grow closer to God. Showing his desire for peace in his later years, Ace remained creative. Well into his 70s, his final album of original music, 10,000 Volts, came out in February 2024 and proved he never lost his edge. He continued performing until shortly before his death. But then, tragedy struck. In late September 2025, Ace suffered what seemed at first to be a mild fall in his studio. He told fans he was okay and canceled an upcoming show just to be safe. But the truth was far more serious. Doctors found a brain bleed, and his condition worsened. On October 16, 2025, Ace Frehley passed away peacefully in Morristown, New Jersey, surrounded by loved ones. The Spaceman had made his final journey. Ace Frehley's life and career were filled not only with groundbreaking music, but also with a series of controversies that often overshadowed his talent. Throughout his time in the spotlight, Ace struggled with alcohol and substance abuse, a problem he openly spoke about in interviews and in his autobiography. These habits created tension within Kiss, especially during the 1970s and early 1980s, when Ace's unpredictability sometimes made him difficult to rely on. Bandmates recalled moments when Ace would show up late to rehearsals or be too intoxicated to perform at the level expected, adding strain to an already high-pressure environment. While fans loved his wild personality and spontaneous humor, his addictions frequently placed his career at risk, eventually becoming one of the reasons he stepped away from the band in 1982. Ace later admitted that the rock and roll lifestyle caught up with him, and his battle with substance abuse became one of the defining challenges of his career. The tensions within Kiss did not end with his first departure. In later interviews, Ace claimed that he often felt creatively sidelined by Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, who he believed dominated the decision-making process. Though the other members acknowledged Ace's talent, they also expressed frustration at what they saw as a lack of reliability. This push and pull dynamic between the bandmates resulted in several public disagreements over the years, when Kiss continued without Ace, replacing him with other guitarists. Ace voiced irritation at being portrayed as difficult or irresponsible. Meanwhile, Gene and Paul suggested that Ace's issues made it impossible to maintain the group's momentum at the time. These disagreements resurfaced during the 1995 reunion and again after his second departure in 2002, keeping the relationship between Ace and the band in a constant state of tension. Ace's struggles extended beyond internal band conflicts. His legal issues also gained attention over the decades. In 2009, for example, Ace was sued by a former assistant who claimed she was owed money and accused him of inappropriate conduct. Ace denied those accusations, and the case was settled privately. But it brought unwanted media coverage during a period when he was trying to rebuild his reputation. Earlier in his life, Ace had also faced multiple driving-related incidents, including the well-known car crash in the late 1970s that became part of Kiss folklore. Though he was not seriously injured, the crash reinforced his reputation for reckless behavior and became symbolic of the chaos surrounding his personal life during that era. Financial troubles created additional complications. Despite the success he enjoyed with Kiss and through his solo work, Ace experienced periods of serious financial instability. In 2013, his home in Yorktown, New York, went into foreclosure, leading to public speculation about his financial management. While Ace often insisted that money was never his primary motivation, these financial setbacks fueled discussions about the long-term impact of his lifestyle during his peak years. Fans were saddened to see one of rock's most influential guitarists face such difficulties, especially considering the massive commercial success of the band he helped create. One controversy that resurfaced often was Ace's accusation that he was treated unfairly within Kiss, particularly during the band's makeup and costume decisions. Ace claimed that he and Peter Criss received less respect and fewer opportunities compared to Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. He felt the band's business structure favored the two founders, leaving him with less control and fewer financial benefits. Gene and Paul, however, argued that Ace and Peter were offered equal chances but did not deliver consistently due to personal issues. This back and forth became public many times, with both sides giving conflicting accounts in interviews and documentaries. Although fans were divided, the disputes highlighted the long-term emotional fracture within one of the biggest rock bands in history. In later years, Ace and Paul Stanley had a particularly heated exchange that caught attention in 2023. Paul made comments suggesting that Ace and Peter's performances during the early Kiss days were unreliable and that the band improved musically after they were replaced. Ace responded aggressively during a radio interview, demanding an apology and hinting that he could reveal damaging information about Paul and Gene if pushed further. Though nothing ultimately came of those statements, the interview reignited old tensions and reminded fans that the relationships between the original members were still fragile decades after their rise to fame. Moments like these showed that, despite the nostalgic image of the original Kiss lineup, the wounds from their early conflicts had never fully healed. Another long-running point of controversy involved the Kiss branding and Ace's signature Spaceman persona. When the band continued using the makeup design and costume for replacement guitarists, Ace openly criticized the decision. He argued that the identity was his creation and should not be worn by anyone else. Gene and Paul defended the choice, saying that Kiss was larger than any one member and that the characters were part of the band's legacy. The disagreement sparked debates among fans about originality, ownership, and respect for the original lineup. Ace's supporters felt he was being disrespected, while others believed the band had the right to maintain its iconic stage identities. The issue highlighted the ongoing struggle between personal creativity and the corporate machine. Behind a globally recognized brand, despite the turbulence, Ace always maintained that his focus was on music. Still, his controversies formed an inseparable part of his story, a mix of personal struggles, artistic disagreements, legal problems, and public feuds that followed him across his career. While Ace often took responsibility for his mistakes and acknowledged the role of addiction in many of his challenges, he also remained outspoken about feeling mistreated or underestimated. His willingness to speak candidly, even when it caused friction, was a defining part of who he was. Fans admired his honesty, even when his comments stirred conflict, because Ace Frehley was never afraid to stand up for himself or express his true feelings. In the end, Ace's controversies did not erase his achievements, but they did shape public perception of him. They added complexity to a man who was both a musical genius and a deeply flawed human being. His life reminded the world that behind every legend is a person wrestling with their own demons. Even with all the challenges and conflicts, Ace Frehley left behind a legacy that is impossible to deny. His controversies were part of his story, but his music, influenced an unforgettable persona, ensured that he would always remain one of rock's most iconic figures.